Hey there, welcome to episode 103 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. Almost to the end of season 1. Very exciting. I am your managing director host, Dan Hugo. I am indeed the managing director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, our Nevada nonprofit, 501c3 public charity. Our purpose is to enable and encourage ideation, innovation, and implementation to make our communities better. It's fairly vague, which is good. We're not just doing code. We're not just doing one thing or the other. We're doing it all. We're doing it all for the sake of innovation and innovate for Vegas. Episode 103 already. Wow. It is 7:27 p.m. on Tuesday, February 4, 2025. Normally I would record this earlier in the day, but are you okay? I'm okay. Very good. Hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you are able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes that I will read verbatim, and then several links this week. You don't have to check out all the links that I put every week that I include in each episode. Sometimes it's 1 or 2 or 4, or this time it's 9. Is that 9? I think so. 5, 6. Yep, 9. I can count. It's a bulleted list, but I just want to make sure I didn't skip over one. I think it's 9. I should do a numbered list, and then I would know. The episode today, yes, about Readme. It could be about a Readme file, but really the Readme concept and file name. I make heavy use of them in our various initiatives and component project repositories. They're a common thing. They're a well-known thing in the world, especially in software development. So let's talk about it. The show notes then. Let's get to it. Summary of today's episode. For an organization such as ours, which hopes to collaborate with volunteers on a somewhat chaotic basis. I've talked about this previously. Agile for Volunteers is one of our hopefully useful approaches to dealing with this. You can't have volunteers work 40 hours a week on predictable schedules. So that's what that means. It makes sense to have everything written down so that someone who works on an initiative for a few hours each month can locate information and work with others using the same information. So in other words, somebody who isn't around again every day, spending multiple hours per day and so on, having things written down prevents the notion of, I've missed out on the last 2 weeks of whatever's happening, and I have no, they should have some idea. So having things written down is helpful for everybody. It is the reading part that, can locate it. So it's important for these volunteers to be able to locate information and work with others using the same information. So you're not 2 versions behind and so on. It is the reading part that can be a challenge. Stay tuned for an AI-generated segment at the end of this episode, an automated discussion of our contributing document, which I created a separate audio program episode about that document several weeks ago, right here on the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. Let's get to those links. The first 4, hopefully you've heard before. If you're new to the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program, we just talk about Innovate for Vegas efforts, initiatives. We talk about methodologies. We talk about civic volunteerism in general, a whole bunch of stuff. We have a website, innovateforvegas.org. That's the first link. Innovate, F-O-R, Vegas, no punctuation. And then a dot, period, and org, innovateforvegas.org. That's our homepage. Slowly but surely, there have been some minor little changes here and there. It'll blossom into a multi-page, less dense, more visually appealing, or at least useful homepage for our organization. It is hosted on GitHub using GitHub pages. projectact.info, that's project-act.info. Autonomous cohort tessellation. It's about discovery amongst, could be civic volunteer organizations, cohorts of 1 or more people. Ideally, it will become generally useful as a bottom-up mechanism to enable and encourage connection, communication, and collaboration among probably it's easier to just say open source projects, but it could be anything. It could be anything really. agileforvolunteers.org. That's all one word, agile, F-O-R, volunteers, and then .org. This is our adaptation of Agile methodologies from 2001. Agile was built or designed or specified or described by and for software engineers or programmers. Agile for Volunteers is intended for all contributors to civic volunteer projects and initiatives. So it makes some very different assumptions, but it takes a similar approach: whole team, user stories, customer engagement, the customer being the person we're doing the work for, and so on. So that's always going to be a work in progress, as is everything we're working on. You can check that out. Eventually it will contain all of the Agile for Volunteers documentation and tools that we're developing. Presently we're developing it internally, but everything we use and do is available in our GitHub repository, which is linked from our homepage. But Agile for Volunteers will eventually split off into its own separate thing. So other organizations and individuals can make use of it, contribute back to it. We can improve it over time. Same goes with Project Act, actually. Mastodon for Vegas, I always have to include that one. It's lower in priority right now, but eventually there will be several episodes across several weeks that link back to what will eventually be a functioning and deployed and usable Mastodon server for Vegas, mastodon.vegas. Wikipedia page about Readme, the history of the Readme file. It's a well-known name for a well-known notion. It has evolved over the years and split up into a couple of different files. You can read about it at Wikipedia. The Y-ARIA standard, that's I think it's the web accessibility. Let me pull that up. Oh, I don't have it up. Web accessibility initiative, I think, for... Oh, I can't remember. But Y-ARIA is about making digital accessibility kind of a standard. So color contrast, text readers, audio and visual interfaces for, well, text is pretty much visual, but to make things, if you're audio hearing impaired, you can usually see a web page or content like this. If you are visually impaired, can you hear it? Can a screen reader properly read? Is the content navigable, and so on? So the Y-ARIA standard, which I used to remember what it stood for, and I am not remembering that off the top of my head. I think it's Web Accessibility Initiative, and then ARIA, A-R-I-A. You can check that out on Wikipedia, which will link to other standards-based websites. Y-ARIA is a W3C standard, the World Wide Web Consortium standard for the world. Next up, the I-18N and L10N. That's internationalization and localization, usually denoted by the I-18N and L10N abbreviations. So it's I, 18 letters, and internationalization, and so on. Wikipedia page about that. Internationalization and localization has come a long way in recent decades, and it makes it easier for people that don't speak one particular language to be able to consume content in their own language. A link to Google's Notebook LM, Notebook Language Model. Notebook LM is an interesting tool. It's not perfect. It's far from it. But I find its ability to generate an audio conversation between two artificial voices based on document or documents input to it kind of novel. I mean, it gets old pretty quickly. But do check out at the end of this episode, I think it's 14 minutes and change. I think it's under 15 minutes worth of computer-generated discussion of our contribution document. And I have a link directly to the version of the contributing document that was used to generate this audio. So if you stick around towards the end minus 14 minutes, you'll be able to hear two computer voices from Google talking about our contributing document as though it's the hottest topic of the week, which I kind of find entertaining. So there's the links for today's episode. Now let's get the party started. The sooner we get the episode started, the sooner you'll get to those computer-generated voices. So in the old days, the classic Readme file, usually in all capital letters, so it's easy to spot. Back then, usually a text or .txt file, or maybe just Readme without a three-letter extension, was intended to be noticed when it was distributed on a floppy disk for someone. Do you know what a floppy disk is? For someone to install or use on their own system. So if you received a piece of software, and this is post mid-70s. The mid-70s, I don't know how commonly available floppy disks were to the casual user or home developer or young hacker, but generally speaking, it was the starting point. If you received a collection of files, you'd see the README file, all capital letters, 6 characters, 1 period, 3, .txt if so. So under 8 characters, that's the important part. So it's a legitimate 2-word file name, no space, README. What do I do with this? Well, it's right there in the name. So it's basically start here. As we were all exploring the earliest days of college internet connections, so when I was in college, BitNet was still just about done. It was kind of faded away, but occasionally I would come across a BitNet email address. So if you remember those days with exclamation points all over the place. So we were exploring the internet connections. You'd land in an FTP directory on a remote machine. It might include a README file or equivalent to let a visitor know more about the particular FTP server or the directory that they were in and what it was serving. So similar function to what you would find on that floppy disk. And just generally what do we publish here? What's going on? And if FTP were still heavily used, I'm going to guess that you, listener, have not used FTP in recent memory, if ever. I would track down whether there's a greeting file. I think when you connect to an FTP server, there's a kind of a greeting file of some sort. And I cannot for the life of me remember what it was. And it doesn't really matter. You probably do not FTP anywhere, or SFTP hopefully today, secure FTP. But you get the idea. As more and more collaboration was taking place across the internets, and this is why the internet was created after all, for collaboration at a distance, a visible and obvious starting point made a lot of sense. And so this well-known file and file name became something of a de facto standard. So now it's something you just look for, and there it is. Start here. README. The top level README file would grow and grow to account for general introductory information, how to build and deploy in the case of a software source code, file collection, who the authors are or were, attribution to other contributors, how to contribute for an open source project, who to contact, policy, security, maybe a license document, which is super prevalent now, and the list goes on. Now it is essentially de facto standard to split these into other files of well-known name, like license. Now, that is also a 7-letter word. 7, not 6. README, 6. License, 7. Authors, 7. And contributing, that's a lot longer. But the contributing document, which you can listen to hours at the end of this episode, tells the person looking at it or reading it how to go about contributing their own work, creative works, to this project, whatever it might be. And there are some others. Some are uncommon, but still useful in some circumstances. I want to say, I can't think of what it was at this moment. I had one in mind when I wrote that. But sometimes a platform like GitHub will create something like code owners, and code owners is used for issue notifications and approvals and whatnot. So if you have code owners with GitHub usernames in it, that will only be useful for GitHub, whereas the authors file is useful in general. So there's a kind of a standard now. GitHub as a service will look for the special files, as they call them, or as they're kind of known, special files. They'll look for code owners, authors, license, contributing, README, etc. in the .github file. But the usual place to find these well-known files is in the root of a particular collection of files. So a repository has a root, that's the top level. That's where you'd find the README and the authors and contributing and so on. Code owners, since it's a GitHub focused or special use file using GitHub usernames, makes more sense to put that in the .github subdirectory in the root of the repository directory. So good times. With more complicated software projects or anything that grows in size, scope, and sometimes even complexity, and that's not quite the same as complicated, it makes more sense to have a simple, or as we find in use commonly today, a TLDR section in the README file, the basic, here's what you do to get up and running in as few lines and with as little fanfare as possible. And then more detailed documentation in a doc subdirectory at the document root. So some people go with docs. I like to go with doc because documentation does not have an S on the end of it. Some people will treat it as documents, but the doc folder is essentially documentation. So docs, doc. If you're using GitHub, it turns out that they will default to using the docs directory for repository website content, or even a CNAME website. So if our Innovate for Vegas website hosted on GitHub with GitHub pages makes use of a docs with an S directory for the source documents for it to display when you visit our website. So by making distinct the public HTML docs, public HTML is a little throwback for any Apache fans out there. Making that separate, you can have your doc source files in Markdown or restructure or text or whatever, or diagrams or SVG files or who knows, and then generate an output docs subdirectory with HTML suitable for display in a Google Pages website. More README files can be found in different subdirectories in general, providing a similar use case for different parts of an overall collection of files and subdirectories. So you can kind of help people navigate where they are at a particular point in a multi-level, multi-subdirectory code repository or similar. Could be all documentation with 25 different subdirectories with different components and different diagrams and who knows what. So READMEs can be very useful. It's a nice starting point. Just as in the case with when you visit a directory for the first time, you look for that README file. You could do the same. You could treat it the same in subdirectories. So hopefully it makes your potential collaborator, the person checking out your subdirectories, your files, your source code, you're having a look. If they can navigate easily, find information easily, maybe it won't be so scary a notion to invite them to join in. So nowadays we can make it all local and accessible, which is kind of it's a bigger deal than people will realize just because it's so commonplace now, but we have come a long way. Over the years, it has become easier and easier to use machine language translation to provide at least the beginnings of a localized version of these useful pieces of information. Not always perfect, but it's a good try. It's certainly better than nothing. And often this translation can take place on the client side, so you don't have to do too much. That is the person visiting a file. So they open the file to look at it through a web browser online. They've downloaded your code repository and they're looking at it in a text editor. However they're proceeding, it is possible to translate documents online from their side. So after they have the document in some language, but they read or speak another language, they can have automated tools like from Google Translate and others can translate the document for them. Unfortunately, you get what you get, so it might not be great, but it's better than nothing. and it's essentially free, which is hard to beat. In the case of the doc files, so these are documentation, these are intended to be instructive and often authoritative, or at least normative. So leaving translation to chance might be problematic. If the translation software doesn't pick up on context or doesn't kind of fill in the blanks for the person speaking the other language, it might come across as disjoint or just weird, maybe even confusing, and that's not quite as helpful. Again, it is a starting point and it's better than a blank page, but now you're giving them homework. Like, here, try to figure out what this says. So we can, what we could do is start with source documents in some language. So I write in English, American English usually, or some subset of it, and then explicitly translate these documents from, in my case, American English, into other languages. Even if each translation begins as a machine translation, so I might run it through Google Translate and translate to Spanish or Chinese or Korean or Swiss or Portuguese, and it could be anything. It could be all of these. We can start with the machine translation and then make the translated, so the server side or part of the sources, make those translated documents and content available for others, so that if someone's reading along and they say, this is the wrong version of this word, or this word has different meanings and the wrong one is used here, or the implications, or it could be anything, could be any subtlety. So if we have the pre-translation, we now have a common base of collaboration to try to make our documentation better for people who don't speak the source language. And even then, my American English may not be perfect. It often is not. And so the ability to collaborate on documentation to make it better, more understandable, more correct, more useful, is one of the upsides of open source. But it's a way to enable people who want to contribute in some way to open source initiatives and projects to do so, even if they're not a coder per se. So it's a good opportunity to allow people to become more involved. It's not what I meant. To enable and encourage this participation. People will say, it lets you do something, and that's not how I intended that. So not allow, enable. With standards like YARIA, which I still don't recall precisely what it stands for, but that's why I put the link in there. You can check it out. It's about digital accessibility, so it's, like I said, color contrast, sizes of text, sometimes a typeface for particular visual or other consumption, so it's easier to read or to follow. I believe there's a typeface that's focused on ease of reading for dyslexic readers, for example. So these are small steps that can be made, just like language translation, to enable more people to participate, regardless of their particular use case that we can try to address. So we can make our documentation and other documents in general within a project or initiative accessible, not only to people who speak other languages, but for people who read other languages, as the case may be, but for people who may not be able to see as well or hear as well in the case of audio. And even I will say out loud, not proud, all of the audio programming I've done in this day and age, it should have transcripts for those who cannot hear, and that's kind of interesting now with AI. A precise transcript is possible, but a document summary may be useful. The interesting thing, though, is that just like language translation, it is possible for someone who needs a transcription of an audio program into text for reading instead of listening, could do that with client-side tools. So I at least don't feel quite as bad, but I should be more on top of this, and free, or let's just say inside my budget for myself, for some of my works, and for this one inside our nonprofit budget, to make things accessible. And that is important. Accessibility is one of our ethos pillars for our organization. So we should not leave people out by not taking these small steps to invite them in. So this can and should extend the actual outcome of to the actual outcome of any project, so we can make our work available to those relying on other languages and perhaps relying also on accessibility efforts and standards, whether it's in the source code, the documentation, or in the final products, whether it's software or a piece of hardware or advertising, documentation for the end user, banners, flags, visualizations, and alternative descriptions for those, which can be read by text readers, et cetera, et cetera. So these are all small steps that can be made to be more inclusive through accessibility. Oh, it's like diversity, accessibility, and inclusivity all go together. Now we find ourselves in modernity. I've already hinted at AI tool usage. And by now you have probably used some sort of ChatGPT or Devin or Copilot or Claude or Llama or DeepSeek, or you want me to continue? There may be a desire, it is all the rage, right? There may be a desire to have AI write these documents for us so we don't have to write a long contributing document or many pages of documentation or initiative, planning or blue sky documents or kind of overview for the developer or end user documentation. Why don't we just have ChatGPT write it for us? Well, first and foremost, your AI tools are unlikely to be motivated by the same interests and intent as a human author like you or me might make use of. So I can say, hey, ChatGPT, write some documentation for my project, which is as yet non-existent, right? Early days. And it might say, huh? What do you want me? I don't know what to write. But you can start by writing some blue sky documents. So when you write original source information based on intent and discussion, user story, construction, and reflection, and then iterating and splitting and rewriting and deciding, because what you want to end up doing is delivering something that works. But it's so much easier to not do those things. Yes, and then maybe you'll deliver something that doesn't work. Happens all the time. So the idea is to make the journey towards some sort of a releasable or usable thing, doesn't have to be software, by a team of volunteers in our case, make that more possible by being clear and concise and detailed, but not frightening people off with too much detail. And I tend to do that. But the way I describe it, if you have the information, it's up to you to not read it or read it, but at least you have it. So once a document or a set of documents is authored to the liking of all or some or one, there is now a basis for document summary. So now you can tell ChatGPT or some other tool, here, read this. Here's my contributing document. And then maybe you can offer some document queries or document prompts, I suppose, or what we sometimes see is ask your document questions. So you might say, how do I contribute to an Innovate for Vegas Foundation project after you've loaded in the contributing document? And it could probably answer you. Now, I did this with Notebook LM, which is it's Google's take. I think they're still using Gemini for this. I just did it last night, so it's okay. It's not great. These are tools that are evolving daily, which is another reason to have good source material, because at any given moment, a new language model, a new reasoning engine, a new agent can come along and read the source material, which was constructed by humans for humans with nuance and evolving meaning. That is, they can change over time. But at any given time, someone can take the latest and greatest set of tools that we know work better than the ones from yesterday and or earlier today, and re-examine our human-generated content and build up a summary or make a nice fake two-person conversation audio program or any number of things. So once you have source information, if you can target it or make use of it in different ways, that can be useful. And again, we are not counting on the state of affairs and the biases and the filters and the guardrails and whatnot of a particular language model and the tools and making use of it. We can actually write what we want to write, or describe in the way we wish to what we're trying to work on, what we are hoping to accomplish as a team with a particular initiative or project within an initiative. And then the AI tools can be used to summarize or to generate frequently asked questions or something, and even those can be evolved. So starting out with good, reasonable, non-hallucinated, rational, and realistic documentation probably makes more sense from the standpoint of AI, if we compare that with having some AI tools just write documents for you. Who knows what you're going to get? If we take a single long and detailed document, such as our base contributing document, which I did do a previous episode about, contributing, I think was the name of the episode. For our organizations, we take that base file, which is kind of long. We can use a tool like Notebook LM from Google, linked in the link section of this audio program, to automatically generate a conversational interaction between two completely synthetic voices that sound somewhat convincing. The voices sound convincing. The audio conversation sounds convincing initially, but it quickly breaks down. You'll start to say, this doesn't really sound real. It doesn't sound like two actual people. I think in this version, so once you create a couple of them, you realize, oh, they all kind of sound the same. There's the introductory part of the conversation right in the first 30 seconds, where one of the voices, and it switches back and forth, which is nice, I guess. So in one version, the male voice will say, well, today we're going to talk about the contributing document or we're going to talk about how to contribute to Innovate for Vegas Foundation initiatives. And then the other voice, the woman's voice in this case, will say, or So it's a weird nondescript response. So you can, the second or third or fourth time in, or if you hear people publishing these directly to YouTube or as podcasts, you know immediately that these are synthetic. They're not human speaking. Misspellings or weird construction of thoughts and expressing them as words doesn't always work out. So there is still plenty of room for evolution and even revolution in this space, but I did want to at least insert this for you to ponder and think about. But it becomes more and more evident as you use these tools that there are missing pieces. If you use ChatGPT to create content and don't review it, you might find yourself in trouble later when someone says, "Did you write this?" Yeah. Oh, because it doesn't seem like it. So if generation of content from nothing or from a simplified prompt that isn't nuanced and detailed enough, if that becomes the norm, then you'll have more and more content that is not great. But if you at least start with a base document or source document or documents that are written to your own satisfaction with human detail, human nuance, and so on, you can use tools like this. And like I said, they may improve over time, or you can decide, this doesn't really work. So I've taken the Notebook LM output for this run, if you will. I had generated a file previously. This was back when I first, I think it was one version before, one commit before, I think, of the one that I used yesterday. So the audio was, I think it was longer, and there's a non-deterministic element in there, at least one. So it could be longer or shorter, but either way, this version I have directly linked in our GitHub repository to the source file, single file that was used to create this. Notebook LM has some other tools like generating an FAQ, generating a timeline, which is not really useful for this particular type of document. A brief, a summary, there's some other stuff you can do. So useful to a point, but I have a feeling if people use these tools enough, you sort of end up, you adjust your own expectations. Like, okay, I know this will be a little bit useful, but I might still want to search through the original source materials. If, and this seems like kind of an easy test, if one were to take something like a legal document, you could take the Constitution, which may or may not be interesting, but you could take revised statute codes for wherever you live. You can take rules and regulations. Maybe you can take your Department of Motor Vehicles driver's manual with all the rules of the road. You can feed that in, whatever that means. you can have your favorite language model parse through that and infer things about what has been conveyed. And then you can ask it questions like, when do I travel 15 miles per hour, or things like this, and see what it says. And you might be surprised at how good or how bad the results are. And that's what I kind of found with Notebook LM. It's not done yet. It would not be mistaken for a human doing the work, but the work can be done automated and in an automated fashion, and it's usable. It's just not great. So we'll see in a few months from now. Maybe artificial presentations will be even better. Months, weeks, maybe days, hours, who knows? But they're always improving. And as they start to improve themselves, they will forget all about us. But for now, we can begin with human-generated words and see what computers can do with or to them. So like I said, I'm going to tack on the Notebook LM generated conversational rundown of our contributing document. It sounds like a dry read, and it probably is. This is the sort of document where it would make sense to have a summary or a queryable document. So you can literally ask a question and the answer may be plucked from different parts of the document to construct a useful representative answer. And ideally it would provide references, right? Like, oh, based on this section and this section and this subsection, the answer to your question is yes. I mean, no. So yeah, there you go. So stick around. Hear Notebook LM's 2 synthetic voices talk about our contributing document for your listening enjoyment. In the meantime, thanks for listening to me, mostly human and all innovative. Take care. Till next week.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're here to Vegas.
Vegas, baby.
No, not quite. Not for a gambling spree, at least. We're going behind the scenes of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation.
An organization trying to make Vegas more than just casinos and shows.
Exactly. They want to turn it into a true hub for innovation in tech.
A real Silicon Desert, you could say.
Love that. And we're going to dig into their contributing.md file.
Which is basically their guidebook for anyone who wants to get involved.
Yeah, the kind of document you'd find on like GitHub, right?
Yeah.
For open source projects.
Yeah, exactly. It tells you how to contribute code, documentation, even just ideas.
And I think it's so fascinating how these open source projects work.
It's really a different way of thinking about collaboration.
Right. Like you're working with people from all over the world.
On something bigger than yourself.
Exactly. It's not like a company where you're just doing your job.
You're part of a community, a movement almost.
I love that. So let's dive into this contributing.md file.
Let's see what makes this foundation tick.
Okay, so right off the bat, I'm a little confused by some of the terms.
Oh yeah, they definitely have their own lingo.
Like entity and element? What do those even mean?
Okay, so think of an entity as any project or initiative the foundation is working on.
Okay, so it could be like a specific piece of software.
Right, or a community outreach program.
Or even just an idea they're exploring.
Exactly. And then each entity is made up of smaller elements.
Okay, so like the individual lines of code.
Or the paragraphs in a document.
Or even like a design for a logo.
Yeah, exactly. So they break these big projects down into manageable chunks.
Which makes it easier for people to contribute, right?
Exactly. You can find something that matches your skills and interests.
And what I think is really cool is how they define contribution.
Oh, yeah, it's super broad. It's not just about coding.
It could be anything that adds value to the project.
Like designing a website or translating documents.
Or even just telling people about the foundation.
Exactly. Spreading the word is a valuable contribution, too.
So even if I'm not a tech person, I can still get involved.
Absolutely. There's a place for everyone in this ecosystem.
So we've established that we can all contribute in different ways.
Right. But how do they ensure everyone gets credit for their work?
Yeah. How do they make sure things are fair and transparent.
That's where things get interesting. They have a system in place.
Okay, I'm all ears.
So first of all, they use something called the Developer Certificate of Origin.
That sounds serious.
It is. It's a legal thing.
Okay, so like a contract.
Yeah, kind of. It basically ensures that contributors have the right to share their work.
So they're not stealing someone else's code or designs.
Exactly. And it also means they understand that they're making their work public.
Which is important with open source projects, right?
Absolutely. Transparency is key.
And they also require something called a sign-off for code contributions.
It's like a digital signature.
That shows you agree to their terms and conditions.
Right, and it helps them track who contributed what.
So it's all very carefully documented and accounted for.
Exactly. No room for shenanigans.
It's funny, though, for a foundation focused on tech and innovation.
They specifically say they don't accept contributions from AI tools.
I noticed that, too. It seems almost counterintuitive.
It is, but it also shows they value human creativity.
Like they want that spark of ingenuity that only humans can bring.
Yeah. In this age of AI, they're emphasizing the human element.
I respect that. So we've got all these amazing contributions.
But who owns all this stuff? That's where copyright and licensing come in, right?
Ugh, yeah, that's the part that always makes my head spin a little.
It can be tricky, but their approach is pretty clear-cut, actually.
Oh, good. I need clear cut when it comes to legal stuff.
So first of all, contributors need to either own their work outright,
Like if they created it themselves.
right, or have permission to share it if they're working on behalf of someone else.
Okay, that makes sense. So what happens then?
Well, once they've contributed their work, the foundation actually copyrights all contributions.
So even though I created something, they own the copyright.
Well, yes and no. They have what's called a grant-back provision.
Okay, now you're really losing me.
Basically, it means you retain the right to use your own contributions.
Even after they become part of a larger project?
Exactly. So you're giving them permission to use it within their projects.
But I can still use it for my own purposes, too.
Precisely. It's like a shared ownership.
Okay, that makes me feel a lot better about the whole copyright thing.
Yeah, it's a fair system. Everyone benefits.
And speaking of fairness, they really emphasize inclusivity and accessibility.
Yeah, it's a big part of their mission,
Like, they want to create a welcoming environment for everyone.
regardless of skill level, background, or language,
They even talk about using standards like WIIRE.
to make their projects usable by people with disabilities.
That's awesome. It shows they're really committed to reaching everyone.
And they're not just paying lip service to these ideas, they actually walk the walk.
Okay, so we've covered what contributions are,
How they're tracked and protected.
and their focus on inclusivity.
But how do people actually get involved in all this?
Yeah, can anyone just jump in and start contributing?
Well, they have a few different levels of participation.
Okay, I'm curious to hear more about that.
So you can contribute to existing projects without formally joining the foundation.
Oh, so like a casual contributor.
Exactly. You can just dip your toes in and see what it's like.
And if I want to get more involved,
Then you can become a team member.
so like a core contributor.
Yeah, you'd have more responsibilities and decision-making power.
That's cool. And what if I have like a completely new idea?
Something the foundation hasn't even thought of yet.
Yeah, like what if I want to propose a whole new project?
They have a process for that, too. You can actually propose entirely new entities.
Wow, so they're really open to new ideas?
Yeah, they encourage it. They want to hear from the community.
That's awesome. It's not like a top-down hierarchy.
It's more like a collaborative ecosystem.
I love that. And they even have guidelines for minors who want to participate,
Yeah, they require parental consent, of course.
which makes sense. Got to keep things safe and ethical.
Absolutely. They're very thoughtful about that.
Okay. So we've covered the different ways people can contribute.
But now let's get into the nitty-gritty of how they manage all this stuff.
Yeah, this is where it gets a little intimidating for me.
Well, don't worry, I'll guide you through it.
Okay, I'm ready to learn.
So this next section of the document is called repository practices.
Repositories. What are those?
Basically, they're like central hubs where they store and manage all their projects.
So like digital filing cabinets?
Yeah, kind of. But they're way more sophisticated than that.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So they use these repositories to track code, documentation, designs.
Basically everything related to a project.
Exactly. It keeps things organized and accessible.
Makes sense. But they're pretty specific about how they use these repositories, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, they have a whole set of guidelines.
Like I noticed they mentioned something called main branch naming.
Right. So traditionally, the main branch of code was called master.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
But there's been a movement away from that term.
Because of the negative connotation.
Exactly. So the foundation uses main now.
Which is more inclusive and neutral.
Yeah, it's a small change, but it reflects a bigger shift in thinking.
I appreciate that. So it's not just about the technical stuff.
It's about creating a welcoming and inclusive environment.
And they also talk about having a clear Readme file in each repository.
Those are basically like instruction manuals.
Yeah, they tell you what the project is about and how to get started.
Exactly. It makes it easy for people to jump in and contribute.
And they even talk about using agile methodology.
Which is all about flexibility and iteration.
So less about sticking to a rigid plan.
And more about adapting as you go.
Yeah, that makes sense for open source projects.
Or things are constantly evolving.
Okay, so they're big on clear communication and flexibility.
And that extends to how they name things, too.
Like, they have specific naming conventions for files and folders.
It helps maintain consistency across all their projects.
So no matter who's working on what,
everyone knows where to find things.
Makes sense. Okay, I'm starting to get a better grasp on these repository practices.
But we're about to dive into some more technical stuff.
Oh boy, here we go.
So they talk a lot about testing and test-driven development.
Testing, like making sure the code works.
Exactly. You don't want to release software that's full of bugs.
Yeah, that would be bad.
So they have a rigorous testing process.
And what's test-driven development?
It's a way of writing code where you write the tests first.
Wait, what? That seems backwards.
It might sound strange, but it actually helps you write better code.
How so?
Well, by writing the tests first, you're forced to think about the desired outcome.
Ah, so you have a clear goal in mind from the start.
Exactly. And it helps ensure that your code actually does what it's supposed to.
That's pretty cool. So they're really serious about quality control.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They want their projects to be reliable and robust.
Now, they also mentioned something about different workflows.
Like Git flow and GitHub flow.
Yeah, those went right over my head.
Don't worry too much about the specifics.
Okay, good, because I was lost.
Basically, they're just different ways of managing code changes.
So, like, who's working on what and when?
Exactly. It's all about collaboration and efficiency.
Okay, I'm glad they have a system in place.
Me too. It keeps things running smoothly.
Now, I did notice that they talk about more than just software in this section.
Oh, yeah. They recognize that not all projects are code-based.
Like those physical objects we talked about earlier.
Exactly. So while they encourage using GitHub's tools,
They're flexible and open to other methods if needed.
it's all about finding the right tools for the job.
Which brings us back to something we keep touching on. Attribution.
Ah, yes. Giving credit where credit's due.
They're really big on recognizing everyone who contributes.
Absolutely. They want to make sure everyone gets the proper acknowledgement.
They use those authors and contributors files we talked about
And they even leverage features like code owners and citation files.
to ensure everyone's contributions are documented.
And they go beyond just listing names,
Yeah, they provide references and detailed descriptions of contributions.
which can be really helpful for someone's career.
It shows they're not just taking the work and running.
They're actually invested in helping their contributors grow.
I love that. It's a true community spirit.
And they even offer options for those who prefer to keep their email addresses private.
Oh, that's cool. Like if you don't want your personal email out there,
Yeah, they let you use a NorPry email address provided by GitHub.
that's a nice touch. So they thought of everything,
They've tried to make it as easy and inclusive as possible.
but they also make it clear that contributions are made without any warranty, right?
That's right.
It's standard practice in open source projects.
So they're not liable for any issues that might arise.
Exactly. It's all about transparency and setting clear expectations.
Which makes sense. You're contributing your time and expertise freely.
So there's an understanding that things might not always be perfect.
And of course, they reiterate the importance of adhering to their code of conduct. Yeah, they want to create a safe and respectful environment for everyone.
Which means they have the right to refuse contributions or participation.
If someone violates that code.
It's about protecting the community and ensuring everyone feels welcome.
Exactly. They take that very seriously.
And they also reserve the right to reject contributions.
That don't meet their standards for attribution, copyright, or licensing.
Again, it's about maintaining the integrity of the project.
And ensuring everything is done ethically and legally.
Makes sense. And I love that they make it clear this whole document is a living thing.
Subject to change as needed.
Yeah, they encourage feedback and are open to evolving their practices.
To better serve the community and their mission.
It shows they're not stuck in their ways.
They're willing to adapt and grow, which is so important in the tech world.
It really is. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We've gone from understanding their unique lingo
to exploring the intricacies of their repository practices.
It's been quite a journey.
And we've seen that their commitment to clarity, transparency, and inclusivity extends to every aspect of their work.
It's not just about building cool projects. It's about building a community, empowering individuals.
And fostering a culture of collaboration and appreciation.
Absolutely. They've really thought this through.
It's impressive. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, I'm really struck by how this isn't just about, donating money or something.
Oh, absolutely.
It's about active participation.
It's a totally different model of engagement.
Yeah. We talked about all the details,
Yeah.
the terminology, the copyright stuff.
The technical nitty-gritty.
But what's really cool is how it all comes together.
To create this sense of community.
Yeah, and shared purpose, like you're part of something bigger.
Exactly. And they really emphasize that everyone has something to offer.
Right. Doesn't matter what your skill level is.
Or your background.
Everyone's welcome.
And they're serious about that. It's not just lip service.
Yeah, they actually make it easy for people to get involved.
Like by breaking down projects into smaller pieces.
So you can contribute in bite-sized chunks.
And encouraging different forms of contribution.
It's all about making participation accessible.
Exactly. And they back it up with real appreciation for their contributors.
Yeah, they don't just take the work and run.
They go out of their way to acknowledge and celebrate everyone.
All those authors' files.
The detailed descriptions of contributions.
Even offering
It
references.
shows real commitment.
Yeah, like they're saying, we see you, we value your work, and we want to help you grow.
And it's a smart strategy, too.
Oh, definitely.
Because by creating that supportive environment
They're attracting more talent.
and building loyalty within the community.
Open source projects can seem intimidating from the outside.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like it's this exclusive club for coding geniuses.
Right. But Innovate for Vegas is breaking down those barriers.
Totally. They're like, come join us. Let's make Vegas a better place.
Exactly. And you don't have to be a tech expert to contribute.
Nope. You can translate documents, design a logo, even just brainstorm ideas.
It's all about making a difference.
So wrapping up this deep dive.
I'm feeling really optimistic.
Me too. It's inspiring to see an organization like this.
Not just innovating in their field, but also in how they build community.
They're setting a great example for others.
Showing that collaboration and inclusivity are key to success.
So if you're listening and you've ever thought about contributing to a project,
But felt intimidated or unsure where to start.
check out the Innovate for Vegas Foundation.
You might surprise yourself.
And who knows, maybe we'll feature your story on a future episode of the Deep Dive.
That's right. Until then, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep innovating.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of open source contribution, Vegas style.